Let's take a look at some sample use cases for QSDA Pro. When you enter the QSDA Pro Analyze screen, you'll be presented with a list of applications available to your current connection. If you have more than one connection defined, you can switch connections using the drop-down at the top. Locate an application of interest. If you have a large list, you can use the filters on either title or stream to narrow your list. Once you've selected your application, on the right-hand side will be a button that will allow you to launch a new analysis. The analysis process collects some metadata properties from the application, such as table and field names, expressions, variables, chart definitions, and executes or calculates each chart. There are several options that you can set before starting the analysis. To learn more about these options, hover over the tooltips to discover their meaning. The analysis is finished when the progress bar reaches 100% and the status is set to ready. Click the View button to open the analysis for viewing. The opening page is the summary page. You can navigate between the various pages in the analysis by using the navigation ribbon at the top. Each of these resource views is sortable and filterable. At the heart of the advice system in QSDA Pro are flags. Flags highlight errors, recommendations, and items you should investigate further in your apps. Flags are divided into 4 categories: resources, quality, practices, and performance. On the summary page, the various flags that have been detected or raised in your application are shown, along with a count of flags. You can also go to the flags page and work directly with a detailed view of the flags. This view is expandable and collapsible. Let's collapse it, and let's start by expanding the quality area. So here is one missing expression syntax error, 13 of those unresolved. And if I scroll down, I'll find the expression failed validation. The error is a bad field name and the name of the field. If I go ahead and open that up with the eye icon, this will give me a detail panel for the flag. So I can see that the Qlik syntax checker has told me that's a bad field name, and I can go ahead and click directly on that link that tells me where that's used. Assuming I have application or access to that application, it will go ahead and open to that page. I can go ahead and then edit the sheet and make a correction. Coming back to QSDA Pro, I can now mark this as resolved by clicking the green check mark. When I close the detail panel, I'll see that that one is no longer listed. And up here, I can see 0 of 1 resolved. If I go ahead and turn on the resolved, I'll see the ones that are resolved. So you can resolve flags from the detail panel, from this panel here, and there's also the option to hide a flag. Hidden flags are perhaps something that you just don't want to look at this time. And once again, you can filter to show hidden yes or no. You can also resolve, unresolve, hide, and unhide at the category flag level. Let's take a look at another flag and a way to navigate with that flag. So under practice, there's a flag that a master measure duplicate definition. So let's open that up. And here is one that says 2 or more master measures contain the same effective definition but use different names. And this can create ambiguity. And it then tells us what the names of those measures are. So I'm going to open up the detail panel. And I can see here that I have, when I look at the expanded definition, 4 measures, 4 master measures that calculate exactly the same thing. Now notice that in some cases I may have a different white space or a comment, but QSDA parses these and understands that it doesn't matter about casing of the functions or white space, that these calculate the same thing. One of the interesting properties here is the use count. I can see this one that's labeled margin percentage used 9 times, and these other ones, which calculate the same thing but use different names, are used 1 time. So I may decide, I'd like to just go ahead and replace these other ones with that one, just harmonize them to use a single name and then delete the duplicates. So I can go ahead and use this button up here, filter using this flag. And this will apply a filter. It will filter all my resource views to those things that are only associated with this flag. So 12 out of 203 visualizations, 3 out of 30 variables, 16 out of 303 expressions. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Expressions tab. And now I'm looking at expressions that are only impacted or associated with the 4 measures in that flag. So here's my master library ones. And then I'll come down here and I can see that I'm using these labels. The one I want to change, I can go ahead and go to the hyperlink, go to the application, fix it, and come back. Okay, back here on the summary page or on the flags page, I can go ahead and mark that as resolved when I'm done. So marking things as resolved is totally optional. It's just a way for you to help keep track of things. This application has a lot of flags. This is a demonstration application. To see what flags are possible in the version of QSDA running, you can select Help Flag List, and that will show you all the potential flags in the current version that you may or may not have in your application. Let's take a look at using QSDA Pro to understand and improve chart performance. I'm going to switch to this MSQ Performance Sample app. Analysis done in the past may have been unloaded to save memory. I can bring it back into memory for analysis by clicking the Load button. Once it goes to the Ready status, I can click View. I'm going to go to the Viz tab and sort by Calc Time, descending. Now the sales by category is a table. Took 2.6 seconds to run initially for the entire table. If I open it up, I can see what dimensions are used and what measures are used, or expressions. If I click this Deconstruct toolbox here, this will open up a new dialog that will calculate each measure individually. So while it took 2.6 seconds to calculate, I can see that most of that was involved in the single measure. By the way, these will never quite add up exactly, but I can see that this is the significant measure and these other two are fairly trivial. So if I want to improve this chart, this is where my focus should be. Let's take a look at another one here, this pivot table that took almost 18 seconds to calculate. I'll open up the deconstruct dialog here. Now this one will take a little while to calculate those expressions. And note that I have a lot of dimensions here. Sales order number 459,000. And then I have other dimensions. And I know from knowing my data that each sale has multiple lines. And some of those line items are represented by product and size. So this is calculated. And I'll see that these fairly trivial expressions took a long time to calculate, but returned many, many rows. So I can't really improve the expression. My calculation time here, my long calculation time, is due to the amount of data. So I might ask myself, is a 7.3 million row pivot table really useful? So knowing my data, I might want to experiment by taking off the line items. So I'm going to uncheck those dimensions and then click Recalc. And sure enough, I'll see that they come back very quickly. I'm now returning 459,000 rows just at the order level. Again, I need to understand my data and know whether this is a useful business result, but I have a very easy way to experiment with different ideas. Let's take a look at how QSDA Pro can help you in some common Qlik Sense development tasks. In this application, I can see that my data model occupies 10 megabytes. 7 megabytes is unused. Dropping unused fields from your data model can aid in performance. To help you with that, under the Tools menu, we have the Drop Field Script Generator. Opening this up will give you a dialog where you can select the fields you want to drop, and this will generate a drop field script statement that you can copy and paste into your Qlik script. If you've worked on dropping fields before, you may know that the benefit from dropping fields comes from not how many fields you drop, but the size. It's reducing RAM is where the benefits comes. So I can sort my list by bytes and then perhaps triage and go after the largest fields first, perhaps looking at them and maybe skipping some that I think I may need later, and building up a list and finding out exactly how much savings I'm going to get. A common task is to understand where a field is being used. Perhaps you have a question from the business or your team is evaluating the change of a field. In this case, territory description. On the Fields tab, I'm going to type TERR in the name, which applies a filter to those things that contain TERR. And I'll continually focus on the territory description by right-clicking and selecting Filter to Selected. And now all my assets are filtered to only those things that are associated with or use the territory description field. So perhaps I go to my Viz tab and find out what visualizations are used. Now I can go ahead and use an export up here and export this to Excel. And the export exports the filtered view that you were looking at on the screen. So now I have an Excel spreadsheet that I can pass on to a colleague, attach to a JIRA ticket, or perhaps give somebody in an email to answer this question. Pressing clear will clear the filter. So let's say I want to understand a variable. I'm going to change this variable. I'm considering a tweak. I want to make sure I understand everywhere I need to test and what the impact of it might be. So this variable name is EXPCD index. It's right here. I can see that it's used 18 times. I'm going to right click on it, select filter to selected. And notice now that it has filtered my list down to all those other variables that are associated with EXPCD index. In other words, that use EXPCD index. And I can see that if I look at this variable below, EXPCDOM, and under its variable names, yes, indeed, it has EXPCD index embedded in it. But if I look at this one up above, EXP budget CYTD, I see it does not reference EXPCD index. It does not reference it directly. It references set CYTD. And if I look at CCYTD, I can see that it references another variable, and that variable references EXPCD index. So when we do this filter to selected or selected, we're going to go ahead and do a nested search and include everything that would be impacted by a change to the selected variable. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration of some of the capabilities of QSDA Pro. To learn more about QSDA, go to easyqlik.com.